Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started as people continue their way in. Hello, I am Trish Christensen, the President and CEO of the Modesto Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for our State of the Valley event, and thank you to Kaiser Permanente for being our premier sponsor of today's webinar. If we go back nearly 8 months ago, the word pandemic was not a part of our daily vocabulary. The arrival of COVID-19 turned our daily living and work world upside down. Since then, there are an array of words we now use frequently as well. Canceled, closed, impact, crisis, virtual, distance, sheltered, isolation, words that conjure worry and fear and have a way of creating hopelessness in many ways. I know that for me, when I think back to February and how I felt my work environment, my home life, and the community I live in was doing, things felt pretty good. It seemed that in general, we were thriving and humming along quite well. The moment the words shelter in place were uttered, it all came to a halt. For a moment in time, everything was suspended in time. The very next moment was a whirlwind. Everyone did what they could to shift and to pivot. We all scrambled to find answers, to find resources, to find options to survive what was happening. Yes, the economy has been hit hard. Businesses have struggled and have suffered. Yet here we are today. More and more, we see and hear how people and organizations are standing together to support one another. Things are evolving to a new normal maybe, but the ingenuity, creativity, and resourcefulness of people is beginning to win this race. Individuals, businesses, and services are finding their way to not only survive this, but to build success despite of this. This is a strong theme of today's discussion, not just the impact of the pandemic, but the potential of the Valley regardless of the pandemic. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to point out that there is a question Q&A box built in this platform. Following the presentations by each of our speakers, I will share your questions as time allows. It is my honor to introduce our first presenter. He is an annual guest speaker at Modesto Rotary. He is involved with a long list of committees, affiliates, and organizations. He is a professor of public affairs at CSU Fresno, and he is the executive director of the Maddie Institute. I welcome Mark Kepler to your screen.
Thanks, Trish. Delighted to be here, even if it's virtually. You know, I say this every year. I love being in Modesto, one of my favorite places, literally. I enjoy those Modesto Rotary meetings. We get to do something similar like that today. Well, first of all, I want to kind of go over some new news, I guess it is, dealing with the Maddie Institute, just so you are aware, because it does directly impact folks in the North Valley. Long story short, we have reimagined or reinvented ourselves. Last year, we signed an agreement with the 4 Valley Public Universities to become the Public Policy Institute of all 4 universities. That includes Stanislaus State, UC Merced, Fresno State, and Cal State Bakersfield. And one of the things we're trying to do there is really take the idea, frankly, that Carol Whiteside had in Modesto with the Great Valley Center, and maybe do a Great Valley 2.0. Instead of relying on just one nonprofit, what we're trying to do is create really 4 legs to the table here of creating a public policy institute for the entire region. So I think that's pretty exciting for some of the stuff that we can do. The goal is to create a top-tier public policy, public affairs institute for the region that focuses on regional issues. One of the things that I've always tried to do, one of the reasons I go to Modesto, is that the Maddie Institute was always intended to be a region-wide institute. One of the problems that I think we've had is more from appearance than in reality, and that is because we're based in Fresno. People may think that we're Fresno-centric. We are not. I wanted to really push that point home, and that's why the collaboration with the 4 Valley universities. I think the benefits for the Valley are going to be substantial. First of all, like I said, it creates a top-tier public policy institute on the level of maybe a Hoover Institute at Stanford or the Institute of Governmental Studies at Berkeley. We now hopefully have an institute that over time we can develop that's going to be at that level, and where we can have specifically an institute that focuses on region-wide Valley issues that too often are overlooked. Lots of advantages for the partners involved. For universities, it's economies of scale. Instead of trying to create their own public policy institute, they get to share one. It's going to increase the visibility of all those universities statewide, because we have a profile statewide with our TV and radio shows and the work we do in Sacramento. For students, it's greater access to internships and fellowships. For faculty, it's more opportunities, not only to get the word out and show what great faculty we have at the various campuses and help influence or at least start a conversation on public policy, but it's also a way for them to collaborate across universities, across disciplines to address some of the issues that are important to the Valley. One of the things we want to see happen is a data-driven, fact-based analysis. That's where we're coming from. And so we're hoping that that will help in that regard. In fact, two things happened just recently that are relevant. We're working with the California Emerging Technologies Fund, which is a fund primarily designed to close the digital divide, which if anywhere in the state where is an issue, a challenge is in the Valley. That's a fund that started with $60 million. It's since, about 10 years ago, it since has about twice that of $117 million in funding to close that digital divide. And so we're working with them, thinking of ways that we can help close that digital divide here in the Valley. Sonny McPeak, in fact, the CEO, is going to be the speaker at this week's Natty Associate event, luncheon, to talk with our partners and folks throughout the Valley about how we might be able to do that. In addition, we've been in conversations with the James Irvine Foundation. You probably are aware of the James Irvine Foundation. It's one of the major philanthropies in California. They have a $2 billion account that's focused on primarily the Valley, inland California, generally, and more specifically in creating what they call an inclusive economy. And that really the focus specifically is on helping increase the economic opportunities of low-wage workers, which of course we have a lot in the Valley. So we're talking about things about improving job fairs, career navigation assistance, improving affordable education, helping people with their first jobs, those kinds of things. And so we're hoping that we can work with them to create some additional opportunities for those types of workers in the Central Valley. In addition, obviously, community impact this collaborative is going to have. One of the things we're going to be able to do, we've already been doing, is bring statewide and national speakers to the region. Too often, frankly, the Fresno has been flyover territory. Speakers will go to the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, or they'll go to Los Angeles, but they won't stop in the Valley. Well, now, because we have a one-stop shop, we can go to these people and say, listen, we can offer you the entire region from Stockton to Bakersfield on your way to San Francisco, maybe to the Commonwealth Club. And so we'll be able to get some national and state speakers to kind of focus on some unique Valley issues. I'm still considered, I guess, a recent transplant, even though I've only been here 33 years, spent more years here than anywhere else in my life, but I'm still, I guess, a transplant. And I have to tell you, when I first moved here from Connecticut, of course, the East Coast version of California, where's the beach? Wasn't quite ready for inland California, maybe didn't really understand it as well as I do now. I think a lot of people in the country don't really appreciate the really unique challenges and opportunities that exist here in the Valley. And so we're hoping that this will help as well. And so we're hoping to make a regional impact with this initiative. Very excited about it. One of the things I will say as I move on to talk about some other things in the North Valley is that we are really blessed to have some really good leaders emerging throughout the region, and specifically in the North Valley. Miriam at the Regional Foundation, Trish here at the Chamber, Ellen Junn at Cal State Stanislaus. We've got some, come to think of it, they're all women. We've got some really, really great leaders emerging that I think it's that's how an organization or a region moves forward, is with great leadership. And so I'm just seeing that probably we have among the best leadership in the entire region, but it's certainly in the North Valley that we've had since I've been here. I'm not going to talk about the November election. I'm going to skip over that because that would take forever, and particularly with the recent events, with the passing of Justice Ginsburg, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, as it were. So I'm going to skip that and just jump right into the North Valley and some just general observations that I have. Dave and I were talking before we went on about the fact that you guys are doing pretty well. Stanislaus County is doing well in terms of unemployment. They've seen a decline from like 17%, I think it was in April, down to about 10.9% last August in unemployment rate. That's better than the state unemployment average, which is 11.4%. A little behind the U.S. unemployment rate, which is 8.4%, but still very good. And if you think about the Valley traditionally has been a lagger when it comes to unemployment. The fact that it's better than the state average. Now, there are seasonal things that are going on, et cetera, but it's still, that's a pretty good number. Surprising probably to a lot of people. I do think that over time, though, we're going to see some changes in the North Valley. Agriculture is always going to be important, but I think you're going to see an increased emphasis in logistics, which has only been accelerated with COVID, right? I don't know about you, but I'm guessing that you're experiencing something similar to me. That you have Federal Express or UPS beating a path to your door. It's like every day I get to see the delivery person, and I think that's common for a lot of folks. And that's going to make logistics incredibly important. And the North Valley, obviously being situated between Sacramento and the Bay Area, is well situated to be a major player that way. I think you're also going to see, obviously, an increase in IT in every regard, whether it be telework, telehealth, distance learning. That's going to be increasingly important, which kind of goes back to the importance of the digital divide that exists to some extent. In terms of education, one of the things that, just a few quick statistics, the value of a college degree, people ask, is a college degree worth it? Well, yeah, if you look at the numbers, absolutely. The average salary for a person with a bachelor's degree is $81,000 a year. With a high school degree, $36,000. So twice as much with a bachelor's degree. So clearly the economic impact of a bachelor's degree is very, very important. And of course, if you have a bachelor's degree, chances are you're going to have lower unemployment, less strain on the safety net, less likely they're going to be utilizing the safety net. They're going to be providing higher tax revenue and probably greater civic participation. All good things. The negative has been that in the Valley, the demographics, statewide generally, but in the Valley specifically, the groups that traditionally have not gone to college are the unrepresented, minorities, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans. So that's an issue that has to be addressed. And I'm happy to say that schools like Stanislaus State and UC Merced are among the leaders in the nation in taking that first generation of students and getting them through and getting them college degrees. That's going to be increasingly important. And I think a school like, for specifically Stanislaus State, is increasingly being found by folks. It was one of these places that people maybe didn't really think about when they thought about colleges. Now other colleges being impacted, they're looking for other places. And I've said this to President John, I've said this before, one of the prettiest campuses in the CSU. I think once you go there, like, this is nicer than I expected. And I think it's going to start attracting more and more students. It's going to be, just over time, going to become more important. Of course, you've also got in your area UC Merced, that's just finishing up a $1.3 billion expansion project. They've got, I think, 8,800 students now. They're moving to 15,000. They have I interviewed the new chancellor recently, and they have a real goal to be a national player. They're already a top 100 university in the United States. And if you look at the faculty they're hiring from some of the top schools in the country. So they're serious about being, a major player. They're not going to be just known as the youngest or newest UC. They're only 15 years old. They made tremendous strides already, but you think about the $1.3 billion investment in UC Merced, that's going to have a big impact in terms of educational attainment in the Valley. The other thing I want to talk about is healthcare. That's been a big issue in the Valley because of the lack, frankly, of healthcare professionals. The primary care, for example, the numbers are the federal government says that you should have 60 to 80 primary care physicians for every 100,000 population. In the Valley, that number is 45. So not quite, a little bit more than half of what it should be. If you take a look at specialty care, the Valley has 43 specialty doctors per 100,000. The state average is 87, so half of the state average. That has been a big issue. Now, with the advent of telehealth, that's going to change things. Yes, there's still a move to create a medical school in the Valley, but the increased use of telehealth may allow for more efficient and effective use of medical personnel to access places in the Valley. Again, kind of going back to the digital divide being so important that we need to close that. The other thing I want to talk about is telework, which I think is might be the biggest thing that's going to impact the region. Did some research and I found out that Americans have saved $91 billion by working at home during the pandemic. If you add up travel time and car costs and all the rest of it, that's a lot of money. The State Department of Human Resources had a May directive where they said they expected 75% of state employees to be staying at home indefinitely. So this may not be a temporary thing. Moody's, for example, has forecasting a 21% drop in rent in new commercial listings in New York City this year, which is worse than the 19% drop that occurred during the Great Recession. So you're seeing a pretty significant thing. And I have a personal anecdote along these lines. My niece, recently graduated from college, secured a position in a data analytics firm in New York City. And she is now living in my condo in San Diego. She decided she wanted to move to San Diego. So she's telecommuting to New York City from San Diego. Now that's one heck of a telecommute, but that's what shows you what's going on. She said, I can, first of all, I can save money by living in New York condo for free, but in terms of not paying New York City rents, it's something that obviously works for her. If you take a look at office space, I was talking to a CFO who said he was speaking with an executive at Goldman Sachs who told him that they'd been spending about $1 million a month in rent in San Francisco. And what they've come to realize is maybe they don't need all that space, that telecommuting is working for them. And so you might see, I think you're going to see a smaller footprint of some of these firms in the Bay Area. And I think that's going to redound to the North Valley's benefit. For employees, the issue is, if you want to recruit and retain talent, you've got to provide them benefits. One of the benefits increasingly with the younger generation is maybe not so much pay, but free time. Maybe they'd rather be spending time at home as opposed to being on a 2 or 3 hour commute to the Bay Area, or 2 hour commute every day. I know folks that even live, in the East Bay that have easily hour commutes each way. And so the fact that you can provide that flexibility of working at home, I think is something that's going to be important. It's going to also mean that the kind of houses and homes that these people want is going to play an issue. They don't want to be cramped into a small apartment in San Jose and working at the kitchen table. Maybe they want a separate room that's an office, where maybe they can get that in Modesto. They can't get that in San Jose. Maybe they can get that in Modesto. Maybe they can get a backyard and a pool while they're at it. So the question is, is COVID, is it going to result in really these deep long-term changes to the North Valley, or is this just a temporary blip? We're going to go back to normal. I have a tendency to think that this is a tipping point. I think we're going to see significant changes that I think are going to could potentially, I don't want to say it's automatic, but could potentially really benefit the North Valley. I think the North Valley is very, very well positioned. Number one, the migration, I don't know the specific numbers. Dave maybe can fill us in on the specific numbers, but my guess is that the migration from the Bay Area and the coast has not slowed down. My guess is it's intensified, if anything. Think about your proximity to the Bay Area and Sacramento, which is another emerging area. So you're sitting in a situation where folks who either work in Sacramento or in the Bay Area can easily, if they need to, go into the office once a week. They have multiple transportation alternatives, right? You've got the ACE train now going to San Jose eventually. You've got Amtrak going to Sacramento. You can drive. It makes it very attractive. Obviously, low cost of housing relative to the Bay Area, and the fact that you've got 2, if not 3 universities. If you throw in UOP, we've got 3 universities in your immediate area, which of course employers are going to like. All that is great, and I think, like I said, the North Valley's got tremendous potential. I think they could really benefit from this. However, it isn't going to happen unless I think the North Valley pays attention to some things. One thing you have to understand, I think, is that Bay Area residents are attracted to classic suburban small city living. So they want to see that. They don't want to, I don't necessarily move to one high-rise city to another. Second, that's going to require good urban planning, which means walkable cities. It means Wi-Fi enabled. It means green urban spaces. Something that's kind of a step up. And then frankly, if you think about, my niece telecommuting from San Diego to New York, you think about the range now of where people can live. You can't, it's not just a matter of you being competitive with Fresno or, or Bakersfield or even Reno. I mean, you need to think of yourselves being competitive nationwide. How do you make the North Valley something that's really special and unique that people want to live there specifically? Because increasingly with telecommuting, maybe you don't even have to live within that. Maybe you fly in once a week. You don't have to necessarily be so close to drive. So that's going to be important, good urban planning. The housing developments, and you've got to get down to real specific detail. Things as mundane as green strip between the street and the sidewalk where there are trees, so there are tree-lined streets. Dedicating secure places for Amazon drop-off packages. You have to pay attention to the detail, I think, in those things. So local amenities, which may before been given kind of short shrift. The Parks Department is always the first one. It's like the music department in a school. It's the first thing to get cut in city government. But maybe now that's kind of considered more of a strategic investment. That when you take a look at the park acreage per thousand, the Valley cities have traditionally lagged in that regard. Well, frankly, good employers won't put up with that. They want to live in a community that has all the amenities that they want. And so, park space, trails, arts and culture is going to be important. Now, Modesto has the Gallo Center. That's going to be a tremendous benefit to the region. So we've got the other good schools. That's going to be increasingly important. And I happen to live in Clovis. And the calling card of Clovis, frankly, nothing unique about Clovis except very good schools. And that's been a major draw for people moving here. Telemedicine, as we already talked about. There is a question as all this occurs and the migration comes from the Bay Area, what is it going to do to kind of the political landscape in the North Valley? Is it going to turn more purple or even blue as those folks move into the region? And then I'll leave you with this. All these things are great, but what's the state's role in helping the North Valley get to where it wants to go? Can it help, for example, close the achievement gap? You've seen some of that with the funding, the local control funding formula, as an attempt to kind of provide more resources to minority underrepresented school districts. There've also been some discussion about the state helping in terms of closing the digital divide. Also, what about infrastructure? What's the state going to do in terms of Route 99? What about high-speed rail? Is that ever going to happen? What about water? And what's the state doing when it comes to water? And then finally, tax policy. California has been highly reliant on high-income earners forever. It makes for a very unstable tax base. And the question is the state ever going to address that issue? It's very easy, frankly, to tax. People will vote for taxes if it's someone else is paying for them, right? That's why they like to pass the sin taxes and those kind of, well, I don't smoke cigarettes, so fine, increase the tax on cigarettes. I'm not a multimillionaire, so fine, increase the tax on multimillionaires. Well, over time, that becomes an unstable system. And California has relied so much on capital gains that when the stock market's doing well, California's doing great. But if the stock market goes down, the California general fund really gets hit badly. And so one of the things you need to be thinking about is tax policy. And the other question is, are we chasing those high income earners away? Now, the research doesn't show that. The research I've seen shows that actually we are still attracting high income people to California. What we're seeing leaving is low to mid income workers because they can't afford California. So they're leaving. The rich people are still staying or even coming here. But that may reach a tipping point that way as well. When just again you're taxing too much that population, and they're just going to say no. So those are all issues that I'm seeing. Bottom line, I see a big opportunity for the North Valley. I think this is, it's trite. You've heard this before about, I think it's the Chinese have two characters for the word crisis. And the first character is danger. And the second character is opportunity. And I see in this pandemic crisis, I see a real opportunity for the North Valley. You're very well positioned. And if there's some strategic thinking that goes on, which I'm confident there will be, and then those plans are put into action, I think this is the next 25, 50 years could be the time that the North Valley really emerges as a region. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mark. Sorry, I had to unmute myself and all that. Okay, so, well, thank you for that. I knew you'd bring some great insight to us through this. And if you're good with it, Dave, we're going to go right into our next presentation. He is a true champion of our community of Stanislaus County and the surrounding region. I welcome Dave White, the CEO of Opportunity Stanislaus.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you, Mark. I agree with Mark. I think it's out of this crisis, we're going to see tremendous opportunity for the North Valley. And I'm going to share a quick PowerPoint to explain why from my vantage point. But it's great to see so many of you on this call, and friends and neighbors. And also like to thank Kaiser Permanente for being such a great sponsor for this event. And I also want to thank Trish for her leadership and for inviting me to be part of this. So I'm going to share my screen and show you, I hope you can see this okay. Give me a thumbs up. Everybody can see that okay? All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we were. Okay, there we go.
I'm not sure we're seeing the right thing.
Okay, hang on just a minute. Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
I saw your inbox.
Oh, whoops. Wrong screen. I have two screens.
There you go.
There you go. All right. So, so the presentation will be about where we were, where the economy was right before the pandemic hit, what the impact was immediately, like in June, and where we are right now. And some of the data we can't get just because it hasn't been released, but we have some really good data to kind of indicate where we are. And what Brad said about us in respect to the whole state of California is true. We've done better than most of California. And I think the main reason for that is we don't rely on tourism and transportation as much as some places in California do. Our industries tend to be essential industries that remained open and in some cases even grew during the pandemic. If you talk to the people in the wine industry, I guess people drink more wine when they're in a crisis than otherwise. So that's been something that's been interesting. But to begin with, I want to talk about where we were pre-COVID. And so back in February 2020, the Stanislaus County unemployment rate was 6.6%. And that's pretty amazing for our county. If you go back in time, you have to go back about 50 years to find an unemployment rate that low. And in fact, during last year, when we were at the peak of our season, we were in even below 6%, in the 5% range. And so that was a pretty promising statistic. The employment participation rate was at 56.04%, which is also very strong. It's that number had been creeping up over the last several years. Commercial vacancy was 9.85%. The average weekly wage was $974, and there were 20,000 plus unique job postings. That means these are active job postings by local industry, local companies trying to fill essential jobs. So, and then if you look at income over the last 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020, you can see a pretty significant increase in the level of income among Stanislaus County residents. A 10% increase in 2018 over the prior year, 1.3% from 2018 to 2019, and then a 4.5% increase in income from 2019 to 2020. That's a pretty strong economy by all measures. Does it mean that we didn't have weakness or challenges? Absolutely not. I mean, there are a lot of people in our communities that do not participate in the economy or are at a level of participation that's very low. And it's the same, it's those people that we really need to think about in order to make our economy and our community even stronger. And it's those people that traditionally have not participated. They come from communities, low-income communities, or from backgrounds where they haven't had the full benefit of the economy as others. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as you can see, in February, things looked pretty good. But then March came around and the pandemic hit. And I remember we had a staff meeting here at the office, and I'd been through some crises before my career in other jobs, and I knew what was coming. When I was in Colorado, for example, we had 2 major fires that came through and just devastated Colorado Springs. And as a result, we had to get involved in disaster recovery. And so I remember on March 16th, we had a staff meeting, and I said, we need to do something because we're going to have some serious impact on our local economy from this pandemic. And so we working with others, many others, we were able to launch a business support program that has transcended into a very beautiful collaboration with so many different groups. And I see that Doris is on the call, and she, under her leadership, Doris Foster, Workforce Development, the county was able to do a grant program on top of the PPP loans that were offered through the federal government. So I just want to give all of you such great kudos for how we came together as a community to support business in this really serious crisis. So going on to the next slide, where were we in June 2020? The unemployment rate was at 15%. The last time we had unemployment that high was in the Great Recession. We were lower than California by 0.1%, or by a tenth of a percentage point. Our employment participation rate dropped to 55.4%. Vacancy went up to 10% plus, and the unique job postings went down by 3,000 jobs. Now that's really important because in June, we're really coming into our season, into our cannery season. The wine companies are starting to hire, and we went down in job postings, which is a very unique thing that doesn't happen very often in the history of our local economy. And so then where are we now? So from June to September, we have seen the economy come back as industries opened, as industries grew, as businesses started to open up. Our employment rate dropped to 10.9%. Now, a lot of that has to do with the seasonal nature of our workforce, but it also applies to other things that are happening. Companies moving in. We've had a number of new companies that have established a presence here in the last couple of years, and that's added. We've had other seasonal things like the census and other things that have contributed to that. But overall, I don't like to put lipstick on a pig, but we actually are doing better than the rest of the state, and our unemployment rate is lower than the state of California right now. Again, a lot of that has to do with our reliance on essential industries and not too much reliance on tourism and transportation. Employment participation is about the same. Vacancies about the same. I do agree with Mark about commercial office space. That's going to be very interesting coming out of the pandemic, especially in large office markets like Silicon Valley, because employers have learned that their employees can work efficiently at home. The average weekly wage, that hasn't been posted yet, but the job postings, again, that's continuing to drop. You would expect that to drop in September because we're already into our season, but it has decreased from last year. But when I go around town, I see job help wanted signs everywhere. What an interesting dynamic. What an interesting, it's kind of a quandary where we have all these job postings and help wanted signs, but then we have all these people who are unemployed. I think the reason for that is there are a couple of things going on. Number one is that for a time, at least early in June and July, it actually paid to stay at home because people were making $600 a week on their unemployment on top of their regular unemployment. And you actually can make more money staying at home. That doesn't explain the dynamic now though, because that went away. Now I think it's mainly because people are concerned about going back to work. They're concerned about the virus. They're concerned about safety. And they hear about their friends who might work in areas where there's a lot of people, and they hear about outbreaks of the virus here and there. And so being safe and being able to help people be confident, I think, is a really important part of our recovery. As if people don't feel safe going back to work, if businesses don't feel safe opening up, that's going to have an impact on our economy. And in order to do that, we have to be responsible. We have to encourage people to be responsible so that the number of cases go down. And I'm not making a political statement here. It's just the facts of life. It's reality. We're in California. We have this system. We have the governor's stay-at-home order. If we want to move from purple level to red level to orange level to yellow, we've got to follow that plan. And people have to feel safe. And so the more we do that, the quicker our economy can come back. I hate to be, again, I don't want to make a political statement, but those are the facts that we have to live with here in Stanislaus County. Now, what can we expect moving forward? It's a lot of people, a lot of economists have talked about a V-shaped recovery where we go into the depression, we come back out, and it's kind of equal, in terms of timing. But we're not seeing that exact V-shaped recovery. And the reason for that is because the stay-at-home order is still keeping businesses closed. People are not taking jobs. People are not participating as much in the economy because they're scared and they're not confident. And so in order to establish confidence, we have to kind of see a decrease in the impact of the virus in our community. So that really depends on how quickly businesses can reopen. The concern that I have is that the longer this goes and the more we're going to see business failure. One interesting fact that I heard is about 80% of small business, they have enough cash to last about 60 days. And if they don't have that cash replenished, they could go out of business. That's a really scary fact. And luckily, we had the federal stimulus that helped keep businesses afloat. Luckily, we had local programs like the county's grant program. Some of the cities are doing that too. That will help a little bit, but there's not. I mean, there's not an endless source of revenue that we can provide to companies. So at some point, the economy has to come back, and so hopefully we'll be able to see things improve. Hopefully there's not another spike in the virus and the pandemic. Hopefully a vaccine will be effective and we'll get out there and make a difference, but we're not out of the woods yet. There's still a lot of concern to be had. Other things that we anticipate and we're hearing as we talk to developers, we talk to people in the industry, is because the virus has had such a tremendous, a greater impact in urban areas, there is a desire on the part of a lot of people to move to what they would consider safer communities or communities where they can, more affordable communities, safer communities. And so Modesto and Stanislaus County, we're right next door to the Bay Area, we're right next door to Silicon Valley. There's going to be demand for housing, and we need to be ready for that. There's going to be demand for all sorts of different stocks of housing, not just your suburban house with a yard and a pool and a tree-lined street, but for downtown housing and for other types of different housing stock. Also, and certainly Mark pointed this out very well, this pandemic has shown employers that their employees can work from home safely. I have an anecdote I like to share. I have a son who's in the tech sector. He worked in Silicon Slopes in Utah. He works for a company called Qualtrics. You may have heard of them. They're into data analytics. Before the pandemic, he asked permission if he could work remotely and move to Idaho, where his wife is from. And so he and his wife packed up. They were granted that permission and they moved to Idaho. And then the pandemic hit. Well, now Qualtrics, they built this beautiful new headquarters building in Provo, Utah. And right now they have 6 people in this 200,000 square foot office building. And that's it. And now they're talking about, well, maybe we just should stay remote going forward because it's working. And now they're kind of scratching their head. Why did we build this building? And so I think that those discussions about commercial real estate are going to be real, and they're going to cause companies to reevaluate what they do in terms of their employees. Now, we are very blessed to be so close to that major metropolitan area, and we have lots of people who have commuted to the Bay Area in the past. In fact, there are about 80,000 who commute from San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Merced County who used to commute to the Bay Area every day over the Altamont. And I remember right after the pandemic hit, I had to fly to Arizona, and I drove over in the morning to San Francisco, and it was like, wow, I've never seen traffic move so freely before, especially this time of day. Some of that traffic has come back, but it's not going to be nearly what we had seen before, in my opinion. And so we have to think about that. We have to think about these employees who are working from home. What does that mean for them? Are they going to be able to work from home all the time? Or are they going to have a need to socially, when the pandemic ends, are they going to need to be around other tech workers? My guess is that some hybrid will come out of this where maybe tech will build co-working spaces and build smaller offices and spread them out around the country where their employees can have that social connection but still can work from home. So that might be what we see coming out of this pandemic. More people moving to the Central Valley because of more costs or high costs, and we're looking for peace. Less retail sales. We saw the Amazon phenomenon happening before the pandemic, but that has been expedited because of necessity. People were not feeling safe going into stores, and so they just dialed up Amazon. And so that whole phenomenon is moving faster, and it's going to put tremendous pressure on traditional retail, and people are changing their purchase habits. People that used to not buy things remotely or online are now doing that. Will that trend continue? What does that mean for our shopping centers and our malls? Those are things we have to think about. Onshoring manufacturing. This was happening before the pandemic, but with the pandemic and the implications that it has on our national security and other issues, we're going to see a trend of onshoring continue to bring essential manufacturing back to the United States. What's interesting, in the last few weeks and months, we've seen an increase in activity for traditional economic development, traditional deals that we weren't seeing as much activity beforehand, but now we're seeing more. What does that mean? It means that companies are now actually triggering those projects that maybe they put those on hold because the economy was doing well and they were so busy, but now they're moving forward with some of their expansion plans. And I think we're poised very, very well to receive a lot of that opportunity that's coming back to the United States. So, weathering the storm, and I loved what Mark said about the Chinese characters, that in crisis there is danger, but there's also opportunity. And we have tremendous opportunity. One is we have essential industries that are really important to our economy. Those essential industries are locally owned companies. They're not going to go away, but they're going to change. And I'll explain that in just a minute. I mentioned our closeness to Silicon Valley. I mentioned our lower cost of living, attractiveness to younger families, and I totally agree with Mark, if we can offer the quality of life they're looking for. Because if you're a tech worker and your employer tells you, hey, I don't care where you live, but I'm going to grant you this opportunity to work remotely. My son, who lives in Boise, Idaho now, Meridian, the company actually pays him to go back into his office in Provo once a month. They buy his airline ticket to do that. So with that being the case, there's no reason why somebody couldn't live in Modesto or Boise or Colorado Springs or wherever. That it's going to be more dependent on the employee's choice. But we need to have a quality of life so we can compete with that. We need to have available, affordable housing so we can compete with that. We need to invest in STEM skills for every industry. Every industry is going through a tremendous change right now. Manufacturing, it's all about the higher skills. It's all about knowing the PLC coding and knowing automation and robotics. That's where they're going. The lower skilled jobs are going to go away, but manufacturing is going to grow in terms of their productivity and in terms of the need for skills. Same with logistics, same with ag, ag tech. These are areas where we need to invest as a community. We need to invest in in coding and all these upper skills that are going to be required in this new economy. We need to invest in quality of life and recreation, arts, culture, so we can attract the knowledge-based workers and their families. We need to invest in our downtowns because that's where people hang out. That's where people live. That's our living room in our community. I mentioned investment in housing. We need to invest in infrastructure and roads and public transit, telecommunications, bike paths, all these things. But it doesn't have to be just the public sector. Sometimes when you say investment, all of a sudden red flags go up and people think, oh, that means more taxes. We need to be creative and work together, public, private, to find solutions where everybody's working together in partnership. And we need to improve the physical attractiveness of the area. I was just in Meridian, Idaho. I wish you all could go there. Beautiful streets, landscape, no trash on the streets, and everything was planned out really well. We can't tolerate a trashy looking freeway. We can't tolerate trashy looking communities, because if we're going to attract these kind of workers that are looking where they're going to go, we need to put on our shiniest shoes, we need to put on our best suit, and we need to look really good. I know Lynn's on the call, so I said that especially for you, Lynn. But ladies and gentlemen, I am very bullish about the future. I am very bullish about the leadership that's starting to emerge here locally with the Stanislaus Community Foundation, Marianne, and with Trish, and with the county and the elected officials and everybody. It's that level and that spirit of partnership that's going to help us realize these great opportunities that lie ahead. And thank you so much. It's been a great honor, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. So I'll remind you all that there is a chat box and a Q&A box, and they're both open. If you guys are ready, I know Mark sort of touched on the one that's in here, but I'll present it to all, and then you guys can.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah,
this
sure.
kind of stuff that Dave is talking about has actually been an issue for a while. We actually recruited, I'll give you a story. We were recruiting at Fresno State. We had a professor who was going to come here from Vanderbilt, which is a very good school. I mean, it would have been a real coup for us to attract him. Then his wife came here and said, there is no way I'm moving to that community. And so it had nothing to do with the school, nothing to do with the quality of the students. It had to do with, hey, they have no downtown. Where's the park space? If I want to live downtown, I really can't do that. I can only live, the kind of thing Dave was talking about, different kind of housing stock. Bing, 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 bing. The only thing that COVID has done is just put a spotlight on these issues that have always kind of been there, but are really apparent now. And also the opportunity that if we do address these issues, I completely agree with Dave and everything he said. The potential is unbelievable. And I think there has to be, and I think there is, civic pride that, you know what, we can do this. There's no reason we can't. We've got a lot of natural beauty. For example, I've kind of gotten behind bike paths. We had an abandoned rail spur in Fresno and Clovis about 20 years ago. I took this 13-mile thing and I created a nonprofit, and within 3 years we had it built. And it really, I think, made a difference. It's a little like a bike path, but the topography, it's flat here. It's easy to get around on a bike. You landscape it, you make it look nice. It's park, it's green space. So those kinds of things, I think you have to have civic pride, and everybody can figure out what they can do to add another jewel to the crown. But everybody should be thinking in their community, what can I do to make this a little better place? And if everybody chips in, that's when you build a great community.
Yeah, can I feed off of that, Mark? Great comments. And we have this skill gap issue. We have these higher skill positions, like in manufacturing, maintenance mechanics and electricians that are hard to fill. But we have the people here locally that can fill them. They just need training. But the other challenge is, just like Mark said, how do you attract talent to your hospitals and to your major corporations where they're going globally to try to find talent when we don't have a nice community, or at least that's the perception. We have a nice community, but we need to do better. And these people, they have options. Sometimes they have 3 or 4 job opportunities they can accept. So we have to think about that. If we want to fill those critical positions. It would be wonderful if our hospitals didn't have to hire these traveling nurses to come in, which they have to do because they can't hire the talent to come here and live here. And so I can't emphasize that enough. That
Dave, can I just jump in, Dave, for a second? Literally, last week, I was mediating a lawsuit brought by a traveling nurse from Alabama working in a Valley facility. So, yeah, it's true.
I can actually add to that. I received a phone call. Chamber gets calls about all sorts of things that people would never know they call the chamber for, but I took a call on Friday from a gentleman who's a traveling nurse. He's coming into Modesto to work in one of our hospitals, and he said he's going to be here about 60 days, and he's looking for a reasonable lodging for the whole time. So it's happening here daily in the moment. So, okay, we're going to cross over here just a little, but I know Mark gave a simple response here, but I'll let you both comment. George asked, if telecommuting becomes more entrenched, what will happen with those open commercial spaces in our cities? Perhaps more living spaces downtown?
I'm gonna let Dave go with that one.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be creative. There's going to be opportunities like that. What do we do about all these malls that around the country that are losing their anchors? And we can expect that trend to continue. Let me give it and I'm not a real estate person, so if real estate people say, Mark, you don't know what you're talking about. But you know, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, but she was living in San Diego, and we put her in a senior facility. The initial rent was $8,000 a month. After different levels of care, it went up as high as $18,000 a month. Now you think about a mall. Let's say a mall is not being used. Couldn't that be repurposed for senior living, perhaps? And you think about the revenue that could be spun off of that. There's a lot. I'm just saying there's a lot of opportunities. The other thing is you take a look at demographics. Forget COVID, just demographics. One of the reasons I really believe in developing communities, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but developing communities for people that, you know, like my mom, we eventually had to move her into a senior facility because she couldn't drive anymore. So, but she still was active. And so can you build communities for those folks where they can walk to things? They can walk to a cafe. They can walk, do things. And so those kinds of things are pretty important. Just take a look at demographics. There's a huge baby boom generation that's going to be looking for that. Amen.
We have one question came in the Q&A box. What is the stance from the city and city manager on these development needs? I don't have a whole lot of insight on that personally, and I don't know if they're on the call. Dave, do you want to add any commentary from your interaction with them?
Well, I saw Tim Dutter on the call. Tim's the economic development manager for the city of Modesto. I know he and I have talked about this quite a bit. I don't know if Jalen's on the call, but maybe
I can let Tim respond. I can open that up.
I can offer my 2 cents too.
Tim, if you're on and able to, there you go. You feel free.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can assure you that is something that we're looking at. There's a number of affordable housing projects that are being baked as we speak. We're very excited about those projects. It is an area of focus for us. There are a number of different developments. Some of them I'm just not able to speak to at this point because of the confidentiality of the project.
And I'll tell you, Tim is a great economic developer. I've worked with him in the past, and he's a new hire, came here from the Seattle area, and he knows his stuff. So we're very happy to have Tim in the community.
Thanks,
but I will say this, that although he's a Wisconsin Badger fan, so we have to.
Hey, wait a second. I'm a Wisconsin Badger. I like Tim already.
Yeah, anyway, I was just going to say that the city, the economic development staff of the city truly get this, and I know they're really working toward that end. I also know that, I don't know if Josh Bridegroom's on the call, but Josh is the CEO of the Downtown Modesto Partnership, and so there's a lot of focus and a lot of planning going into our downtown, which is all great. And so again, lots of opportunity, but we need to think about being able to catch that wave. You know, the city of Modesto wasn't able to catch the last wave of housing that came in because for various reasons. And but there's going to be another wave, and we need to catch it, and we need to be ahead of it. And so hopefully our elected officials and our city staff and everybody in the community can rally together to make sure that we're prepared to welcome those individuals who are going to be moving here for whatever reason.
Roy,
No, I can tell you, I can just
go
jump
ahead,
in.
Mark.
It's
Yeah,
not
go ahead.
North Valley, but I know I live in Clovis, and recently, apparently, there are 800 acres are being taken down by a developer to build a development north of where I live. 800 acres, and I'm thinking, where are these people coming from? That's a lot of houses.
Yeah, Roy mentioned on here, it's really hard to buy a home here right now unless you're overpaying. And I can share that our daughter was in the market for a new home. She got serious about it in February. She ended up making an offer on 9 homes before she got the one that she got to keep. And it's kind of a heartbreaking roller coaster to go through, falling in love with the house, finding it, and then competing. We know one of the ones that a friend of hers was looking at. They went in, looked at it, they went to make an offer. The very next day, there were 30 offers on that house already. It's incredible, the demand here. Even with all this going on, it's kind of baffling.
And Trish, it's not only housing, it's also apartments. I have a friend who manages a really nice apartment complex here in Modesto, and they had an apartment open up, and they had 30 people come for a showing for that apartment. So it's
a lot.
It's a very acute problem we have right now.
Jeff mentioned that Mark mentioned the issue of water. MID's produced an excellent documentary, Until the Last Drop, about the state threat to take more water from our 3 critical rivers. I know it's out there. You can find it. It's on our website, our Facebook feed. It's also on MID's. I haven't seen it yet. I've talked to several people who have, and it's excellent. It's done very well. People are really impressed
That might
with
be the one thing that really constrains growth. Deal with the water issue.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Our essential industries, ag and food production, I think maybe there'll be a different attitude about them going forward in Sacramento.
Well, in addition to the vacancies created by telecommuting and the ensuing developments, is there an effort to recruit new employers to the area as the needs for office space change? Smaller satellite offices, training for new hires, etc.
I can answer that. Great question, Christina. And yes, there is. In fact, our organization, along with the San Joaquin Partnership and the Greater Sacramento Area Economic Development Corporation, have been invited to participate with the Bay Area Council, which is our counterpart. It's an economic development organization that serves the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and we're having strategic discussions about these issues already. We're talking about how do we work together to make sure all areas rise together. How can the Valley support the needs of Silicon Valley employers, not just to provide bodies to fill seats in Silicon Valley, but what can Silicon Valley do to make it easier for people to commute or to even work from home here. One discussion we've had is to perhaps create more co-working spaces where we could ask Silicon Valley companies to help fund those co-working spaces so that when people have the need to collaborate with other tech workers or even for social engagement, they can just go down the street instead of hopping on a train or in a car to go over to San Jose. So we're having those discussions. We also believe that we will be the recipient of we're working toward attracting back offices from Silicon Valley. They don't need to have all of their offices. And so these are major multinational corporations. They have many divisions, many offices. They don't all have to be in Silicon Valley. In fact, it's not cost effective for that to be so. So we're having those discussions. I also already mentioned the reshoring. I think we've seen a bit of a trend for smaller tech companies to come over to capture the workforce that lives here. We've had companies like Opportune, Tyler Tech, Novo Technologies, and others that have come here and established themselves. So we're going to pursue that trend as well. We have a tool that we use. It's called CoStar. It's a real estate tool, and it tells us when companies, when their leases expire. And so we know about companies that are going to have to make a real estate decision in advance of that decision being made. So we're being very intentional and proactive to reach out to these companies.
Jared is asking, is low income housing the answer to which will bring our downtown up to the next level and also lures individuals such as the college professor and wife that was referenced earlier?
Low-income housing, I think we have to be careful how we define that, because I think when people hear low-income housing, they think, oh, this is like Section 8 housing, and what is this going to do to our neighborhood? And certainly part of that could be that type of housing, and there is a need for that type of housing, and we need to focus on that. But also, low-income housing could also be starter homes. It could be rentals for people who are just getting started. Maybe they got their first job working at a local company and they're on a career track, but they're really having a hard time finding anything they can afford because the prices have just gone astronomical. So it's having more of that. The first time home buyer, the first, it's the young couple that's just getting into an apartment, trying to save up their money for a down payment, that type as well. Yes, we need that, and having that downtown would be great, because then people could walk to work in some cases, and they could recreate in the evenings and have all their essentials. But it's, like I said, it's got to be. It can't just be one thing. It has to be because everybody's different. Everybody has different likes and dislikes. So we need to look at lots of different types of housing.
One of the things I just want to follow up on that. Two things. One is within about a half mile of my house, Section 8, and I live in a nice area. Section 8 is being built, apartments, because Clovis has it's been alleged they weren't allowing enough Section 8, and so they allowed this development. And one thing I've learned about Section 8 is, number one, with the Fresno Housing Authority, they generally build nice facilities and they're well maintained. That's important. And second, that there's quite a waiting list to get in there. So people, once they get that, they don't want to lose it by, doing dumb things. So, I'm hopeful that this is going to be well maintained by people who appreciate the opportunity being given. We'll see how it plays out, but I think that is going to happen. The second thing I want to mention was, when I first moved here, there are two things that really struck me. I remember driving down Shaw Avenue in Fresno and thinking, the tallest building is 2 stories? What is this? I mean, I had never seen a city where there were no tall buildings, at least down Shaw Avenue. And then I realized once I got here in 87, that the downtown at that time was already dead or dying. And that was it was unfortunate, because I was looking forward to kind of exploring downtown, and there was no downtown. And I think that to some people, they want that option. They want to have some down. They may not want to live there, maybe yes, maybe no, but they want a downtown, because I think that really is the heart and soul of a community. A strip mall or a mall, nice, but that's never going to be the heart of the community. And so I think the downtown is absolutely critical. I think, again, I would argue demographics, as people get older, maybe they're going to move out of a house and maybe close to a downtown area that provides them all the amenities that they want to live a normal life. They can go out to a restaurant, go to a coffee shop, etc.
And they don't have to put all their money into their mortgage, and they can put more money into travel so they can go see their grandkids.
Right.
Okay, looks like the question boxes are quiet. So I'll go ahead and shift us towards concluding. I want to thank each of you for joining us today. I really appreciate that you both accepted my invitation to present a State of the Valley webinar. First one of its type, and I think it was very eye-opening. So I really thank both of you. I hope the rest of you have enjoyed hearing from both of these gentlemen today. The information and insight they provided us is promising and timely. It will be exciting to see how our region develops and evolves going forward. It is clear we have plenty of opportunity ahead of us. Before we conclude, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a few items the Modesto Chamber of Commerce has in motion. Although we will not be hosting Oktoberfest this year, as is tradition, we still wanted to do some sort of outreach for the community. In its place, on Friday, October 2nd, we will be hosting a family hot dog drive-by from 4 to 6. You may pre-reserve and prepay for your meals on our website to save a step. This will take place in the one-way parking lot of Gianelli Nielsen Law Firm. We're having a good time building all the little fun elements for kids to go in their little meal bags. A program we're thrilled to announce, and one we have partnered with Modesto Junior College on, is Chamber University. a chamber portal, which will make classes available to you and your workers. This is an opportunity to enhance skills you already have or gain some new ones in a wide array of areas. Whether the student is wanting credit or not, there is a class for everyone, every skill set need, and any interest. We have our Standing Economic Development Committee, Government Relations Council, and Stanislaus Green team meetings back monthly and virtually, but we are also launching our Women in Business Network this Wednesday, our Young Professionals Network next month, and our Tech Connective Network will be coming online in November. As always has been the case, these are open to each of you, whether you are a member of the chamber or not. Disney Institute will be back in November for the 4th year in a row. We've had a lot of people ask us about this. We are one of the very first organizations. Disney's first virtual version of this is going to be done with. In early December, we will be hosting an Inspire Youth, Inspire Dreams event, which we are already very proud of. Here we will be providing businesses in all 15 sectors of industry the opportunity to share a moment in time of your work life directly with 6th graders. Specifics on this will be out in the next couple of weeks. Lastly, we are now members of the California Green Business Network and have been selected to be the Green Certification Coordinator for Stanislaus County. If you have ever wanted to lower the cost of doing business while expanding your sustainability efforts and striving to become a green certified business, we can help you reach those goals. Information on all of this can be found on our website and on our social media platforms or by emailing info@modchamber.org. And with that, to all of our guests and to both of you gentlemen, thank you for attending and have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.